Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Chicken Box. We missed you last week live. I hope that you enjoyed the show. Nonetheless, we were in an Afro team retreat all day, but we are so happy to be back with you today, live on Chicken Box. I'm Frances Tony Draper, the CEO and publisher of the 130-year-old Afro American, and we just call it Afro News. And joining me today is my co host, Courtney Alexander. How are you, Courtney?
I'm doing well, and I'm blessed to be here.
Well, good. Thank you. And our other co host is Kevin Peck. He is traveling today. Now, if this is your first time on Chicken Box, let me tell you a little bit about the show. It is a intergenerational show where we get perspectives from at least the co-hosts. We're representing the boomers. Kevin's a Gen Xer. Courtney, you identify with which, Gen Z or Gen X?
Gen Z.
Gen Z. So we had a Gen Xer, but we're glad to have a Gen Zer with us as well today. She is our co-host, and it is lunchtime someplace. Chicken box with two X's. If you're from Baltimore, you know a chicken box is four wings and a fry. But so grab a lunch, grab a drink, come on and join us. Ask somebody else to chime in. We want to hear your voices as well. And we're just glad that you're here today. This is an important day in Maryland voting history. The Afro is located in Maryland. This is a very, very important day. This is the first day of early voting in the state of Maryland. And so we're going to talk about voting in general. We're going to talk about voting, though, specifically in Maryland. And we are so pleased to have with us today Delegate Brooke Lierman, who represents the 46th Legislative District of Baltimore City in our state legislature. Delegate Lierman, so glad to see you.
Great to be here. It's such an honor and a real pleasure. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for all the amazing work that you do.
Thank you. And Megan Sales, who is our business reporter and Report for America core member, who I know can't stay with us the whole show today. Megan, you are also a Gen Zer, so we are happy to have you. Delegate Lierman, we're going to put you on the spot. You identify with which generation?
I am in between all the generations. I was born in '79,
Okay.
so there's all sorts of jokes about those last couple years of the '70s. Are we millennials? Are we Gen Xers? Are we, where do we really fit in? Because we don't really fit in with anybody. There was this game, an early computer game that some of us played, in computer classes when we were in grade school, called the Oregon Trail. And it was like a first generation computer game. And so I've seen a couple articles remark at the kids that were born in sort of the late 70s, early 80s were like the Oregon Trail generation, because we were there when we just learned computer games. But so I'm in the middle.
That's all right. I call myself a millennial boomer.
Nice. Nice.
And so I understand, and we don't all fit in a box anyway. So if you're just tuning in, we also invite you, those of you who are watching by way of Facebook, please put your comments in the chat. We want to hear from you. We are so glad that you are joining us this afternoon. Share and like this broadcast so that others may join in the conversation as well. And because Megan, I know you have, as I said earlier, another meeting to go to. I just want to start with you. Let me say in full transparency that the Afro was pleased to have endorsed Delegate Brooke Lierman, who is seeking the Democratic nomination for comptroller of the state of Maryland. And so we're going to come back and we'll find out what all of that means, Delegate Lierman. And so we're just happy to have you here. And Megan wrote that endorsement article. But Megan, I'm going to start with you. You're on the box, Megan. You can just be on the box to say something. You can ask Delegate Lierman or any of us a question, but you're on the box.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Draper. And thank you, Delegate Lierman, for being here. As Dr. Draper had said, I am part of the Gen Z generation. And, I was also, in addition to being a journalism major in college, I was also a government and politics major And a lot of times in class, we talk so much about the low turnout for young adults. And, with the pandemic, I think I've seen lots of articles and things that it's become kind of worse because people weren't able to get their driver's license and things like that. And you need that identification to be able to vote online. And I just want to know what your thoughts are, Delegate Lierman, on how we can motivate young voters to get out there and go to the polls. Especially if you become comptroller, you're the tax collector and things like that. And I know maybe you're not thinking about taxes when you're fresh out of college, but it's something that we have to certainly consider down the road.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Megan. And I think that this has been something, this is something that we've been grappling with for many years, right? It's not just right now. In fact, before I went to law school, in the early 2000s, I helped start an organization called the Young Voter PAC, just totally dedicated to working with candidates who wanted to increase young voter turnout, because I felt very passionately about getting young people involved. I think, look, young people, there's a lot going on. We all have very busy lives, but you show up when you feel like you're being spoken to, right? That people take you seriously, that they're willing to listen to you, and that they show up where you are, right? If you're a candidate and you only go to certain areas that aren't populated by young people and you're only speaking about issues that young people can't identify with, then there's a huge disconnect, and people are like, well, I have studies to finish and I have, loans I have to pay off, and why would I, get involved in work? So I do wonder if some of the things that we're seeing at the federal level will actually drive some turnout, like Roe v. Wade's overturning, because that, there's some pretty scary things happening at the federal level. At the state level, though, look, I love state government because it can make such a huge impact on people's lives so directly. We're just talking about just graduating from college. Well, a lot of those students are probably graduating with debt, right? Yes. And in the comptroller's office, it oversees our 529 plans, which of course can, if we work with families to help save money, then of course we can decrease the amount of debt the students have to pay. So I think thinking through, building up your credit score so that you can buy a house someday, these things. So I think we need to do a better job at being really intentional about speaking to issues that are resonating with young people, and showing up where they are to make sure that they know that their voices matter, and that they're being heard. People want a seat at the table and they should have one. They're the future.
Yeah, I always think like that too, because I think you're so right. I think it's that young people think that politicians, maybe they're not worried about them. They don't care about them. And I think it's almost like a circle, because it's like, oh, well, they don't care about me, so I'm not going to show up to vote. Right.
And then they keep not caring. Yes. Because they don't show up to vote. I know it's a vicious cycle that you get into. Well, I don't talk to young voters because they don't show up to vote. Well, young voters don't show up to vote because you don't talk to them.
Yes.
So yeah, no, yes. We need to really focus on breaking the cycle. And it's interesting. There are some young people running for statewide office. I'm not a millennial or a Generation Z, but I am one of the younger people, right, running for statewide office. And when I first ran for delegate, I was one of the youngest people in the House of Delegates that year. And part of the reason I ran was because I felt like we needed younger voices in the House of Delegates. And there were no people with young kids experiencing the public school system. There was nobody sort of, saving money to buy a house. Like there were, I just felt like you need all different perspectives. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I was wondering, Delegate Lierman, too, as you just mentioned, you've been a delegate for 8 years now. How do you think that position can kind of inform, your hopefully new role as comptroller, or just, inform that position? What have you learned?
So much. Look, state government, I'm an attorney, right? I've been a practicing civil rights and disability rights attorney my entire time, also being a delegate in addition to being a mother. But look, state government is its own separate, ecosystem, and it's incredibly complex. There's, a number of different agencies. There's a, $52 billion budget. I worked on our appropriations committee, so understanding the budget. Our procurement system is incredibly complex. Our we oversee a huge pension system, right? And so state government is incredibly essential in people's everyday lives in ways we don't even realize. And I think that what I've learned from serving on the Appropriations Committee, understanding how state government works, will help make it so that I'm ready to go on day one, right? I understand what the comptroller does. I understand how to get things done in state government. I see the big picture, but I also am able to really sweat the small stuff because details really matter. And so I think that state government background will really serve me well. Also, I've built, relationships around the state, because even though I represent District 46 in Baltimore City, I've worked with state legislators all over Maryland. And now in my campaign, I've traveled all over Maryland. And so I have this, a perspective, a statewide perspective that's really helpful as well. Understanding, knowing people who live and represent and work in those areas, and also being exposed to a huge number of different challenges and ideas of solutions, right, in different areas. So I think, both our current comptroller and Louis Goldstein, who was our comptroller for many years, were also in the state legislature before they became state comptroller. And I don't think that's an accident, right? It's really good preparation for being a comptroller.
That's good. So if you're just tuning in, this is the Afro-American Newspapers / Afro News, because we're a media company, not just a newspaper. This is our weekly show called The Chicken Box. And so we want to say to those who are watching, don't be a chicken, get on the box. And I saw we had a comment about young voters. We'll go back to that comment. And so please like and share this. And while I'm giving a commercial, we also want to ask that you join us on August 13th. Go to afro.com. We are celebrating 130 years of continuous publication as the oldest Black business in the state of Maryland, third oldest in the United States. And we have a lot to celebrate. Courtney, I want you to jump on the box, and then we'll get back to you, Megan. You have a question for Delegate Lierman, or you can just talk. That's what Chicken Box is about. You can just get on the box and tell us your own viewpoints about voting, whether it's young people voting or just voting in general.
So I do have a question that's stemming from Megan's. Do you think that there is a decrease in voting for young people due to the COVID-19 pandemic?
That's a good question. And I haven't seen data demonstrating a decrease or a market decrease. It's entirely possible that it's happening. I just haven't seen the data. But I will say in Maryland, one of the things that we did starting during the pandemic, and that of course we've continued, is vote by mail, right? And vote by mail really has the power to dramatically increase voter turnout. We know that in some of the other states that use vote by mail, they have the highest turnout in the nation. And so last year, actually, during the pandemic, the governor, we were under an emergency order, and the State Board of Elections mailed out a ballot to every registered voter, which dramatically increased voter turnout, right? Just getting that ballot to you, boom, right? You put it in a drop box, you drop it in a mailbox, really, really simple. This year, we sort of went back to sort of more normal times. And so rather than having a ballot mailed to every person, the State Board of Elections sent a request form to every registered voter. So you get something in the mail saying, do you want to request a mail-in ballot? And, nearly 400,000 Democrats wrote back and said yes. I think it was 353,000 Democrats have requested mail-in ballots around the state. So it's been so far enormously successful in terms of increasing overall voter turnout. And I'll have to go back and look at the ages, because of course you can break it down by age bracket as well.
That would be interesting to take a look.
Yeah.
I'm one of those that got a mail-in ballot.
Yep.
And one that you print out yourself. It's doable, but you really have to pay attention to all of those instructions. Let me stop and say hello to some who are watching by way of Facebook. Dorothy's joined us. Lenora, hello, thank you. And Dorothy is our editor. Hey, Jewel, I'm just going to call your name. We have two Jewels. Two Jewels. There's the other Jewel. They are faithful. They get a diamond star. They are faithful Chicken Box participants. And Prim, I see your comment. We'll go to that in just a moment. And Bonnie, we see, oh, there she is. I mean, before I can say the names, they're popping up. And so we're glad to have you. So one of our viewers is saying, Prim is saying, state government, politicians, well, they're talking about being fake, but also he's got a comment or she's got a comment about it's a business, about the dollar. There are people who just feel like nothing is going to change. Nothing's going to change. Before you answer, Delegate Lierman, because it's not just the politicians, it's also all of us. What do you think, Megan? What do you think, Courtney? Then we'll get Delegate Lierman to weigh in. What do you think?
I mean, with this comment, I kind of agree. I think that's why I agree with Delegate Lierman's point too about how with all the things going on the federal level, hopefully there will be better voter turnout, because I think young people are much more engaged. That might be because of social media, so we can see all the different, tragedies and atrocities that occur in our country and things like that. And I think young people are very, what's the word? They're not quick to buy into what politicians are offering and things like that, because it feels like we haven't seen change. And it's funny because we're the young ones, so we haven't really given it time to see change, but still we want change now, I guess.
So a lot of skepticism. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Courtney, what do you think?
I also agree with Megan. I think that our generation, we're very influential and we want to see change. We have seen so many tragedies happen over the years, and it's very exhausting on our mental and emotional health. And yeah, we want to see the changes happen. So we aren't just going to vote for someone because I guess the media, vote for this person. We need to see why, we need to see what changes are going to occur. We need to know.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna come back to you guys in just a moment to find out what kind of changes are most important to you. But Delegate Lierman, what do you think about that comment?
Yeah, no, look, I think government, our representative democracy, is only as good as the people that we elect, right? Government, and we need, I sometimes say, if you don't show up to vote, there's someone else who you disagree with who is going to show up. And their vote is going to be counted and yours isn't because you didn't show up, right? So you can't let other people choose your government for you. And I think too often that happens, right? But look, we also are in a place, right? I think we're in a pretty dark time in American history. Let's be real, right? I mean, we have a Supreme Court that does not agree with the majority of Americans on most issues, right? Whether it's climate change or women's rights or, some sort of basic fundamental freedoms. We are coming through a global pandemic, really important racial reckoning in this country. And, it's really frustrating to see things get stymied in DC. I get it. I mean, it's, we have the Senate, we have the House, we have the presidency, but we still can't pass things because of the filibuster, right? And so it's just why do we do, and, I think you can, and I think we all have to sort of take moments to just, be kind to ourselves. But I also hope that we all stay in the fight because, I think if we give up, look, other people who we disagree with aren't giving up. And so we just got to sort of pick up the baton and keep pushing forward because I don't think there's an alternative. I mean, it's why I run for office, right? Because I think that we can do better. And here in Maryland, I really believe that state government is where we can positively affect people's lives and do really big, good things for Maryland families, for small businesses, for communities. And really we do pass big things in our state General Assembly, right? It's been an honor over the past 8 years to pass, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, right? The largest school and public school education sort of reforms and equitable funding bill that we've had in a generation. The Bill to Learn, in my district alone in Baltimore, we've built almost 8 new schools in the past 5 years. Right? I mean, that's like phenomenal for those kids in Cherry Hill to get beautiful new schools when they hadn't had a new school in 40 years, right? I mean, that really matters for all our kids. Like, so on issue after issue, we expanded voting rights. We've protected a women's right to choose. We are looking at ensuring that even basic things like planting more trees around our city to help cool things down, right? And preventing gun violence. Like all of these things can happen at the state and local level. We can really step up and do that work. And you can pass things and get things done much more quickly, I think, in the local and state government. And so as down as I get about our federal prospects sometimes, and it can be really frustrating, I know that like digging in at the state level is where we can make really good changes and really help families and, give people the chance to reach their full potential. So don't give up and elect good people.
So Megan and Courtney, if you could just say what's important to your generation? What issues? What's important?
I mean, I think especially right now with the time, abortion rights is very important to our generation. And I feel fortunate to live in Maryland because I think most likely I won't have to worry about that in the future. But it does make me really sad for girls my age and of any age that are in other states that are now going to have to really be concerned about this and maybe be put in harmful positions and things like that. I think gun control also, I mean, my school, when I was in high school, there was like a walkout during our school for gun control because it's scary. I mean, I went to a Catholic school and we had protesters show up and things like that. And they had to make sure they keep us safe and stuff. But it's just like, it just really breaks my heart that, kids are going to school and teachers are, worried about how am I going to be able to protect my students if somebody comes in with a gun.
It's crazy where we are. I mean, it's unconscionable.
Mm-hmm.
It's really scary.
It is scary. Courtney, how about you? What's important to your generation? What's important to you as a Gen Zer?
I also agree with Megan. I think right now, women's rights, I was just shocked when I heard the news about that. It's very unfortunate for women whose rights have been restricted. It's not fair. And that's something that we need to change. And I also agree with gun violence. Mass shootings should not be normalized. We shouldn't be afraid to go to church, to go to the grocery store, to even go to the park or something. There was a shooting in Chicago, over the weekend, a mass shooting or Highland Park. And it's scary because that's about 45 minutes from me. And it's terrifying. We shouldn't have to live in fear like this. I also think police brutality. I just saw another shooting happen on social media, and it was so hard to watch because no one should have to die like that. It's just this country, things like that should not be occurring.
Yeah.
You
referenced Highland Park. I walked in a lot of parades on the 4th of July, and my son came to all of them with me. And Highland Park, I heard about it about midway through the day. And I thought, should I have my son here? Am I putting him in danger by being in a 4th of July parade? I mean, it's crazy that you have to think like that. And then we were at the Annapolis parade. The last parade we did was the Annapolis parade. And I literally found myself looking at the rooftops because that's what, I mean, it's terrible. And it's awful.
Yeah, there are those things that trouble us all. Now, if you're just joining us, this is the Chicken Box. This is a place where you can speak your truth. And so I don't want anybody who's watching online thinking that, I need to hold back my comment. You have a comment, put it there. You have a question, put it there. If you have a question, I have a question I'm going to ask Delegate Lierman, because some people might not even know what does the comptroller do? And
sure.
The comptroller of the state of Maryland, Megan something about collecting taxes, but I think it's a little bit more to that position. Can you tell us what a controller does?
I can, and Megan knows I can too, because she heard me give my spiel. But I'll keep it brief. Look, we have 3 statewide elected officials in Maryland. A lot of other states have many more. We just have 3. We have the governor, independently elected, I should say. We have the governor, we have the comptroller and the attorney general. And the comptroller is like the elected CFO of the state, basically. It sees every dollar in and every dollar out. And along with that, it has a number of different roles, including, sorry to remind you all, running to be your next tax collector. But also, and there's so much we can do there, and I'm happy to talk about each of the roles, but also sits on the Board of Public Works, which is the body that's responsible for approving or denying all contracts in the state of Maryland, right? How we actually spend our money. So really important. Sits on the State Retirement and Pension Board, overseeing $70 billion, right, of pension investments for 415,000 state retirees. And it's got that statewide bully pulpit, right? To be one of 3 independently elected statewide officials is a big deal. And so just, there's a number of other, it runs the 529 plans for college students. It oversees a number of other things as well, like the registers of wills. So it has to do with wills and estates. So there's a number of things that it does, but it's at the end of the day, if people want one sentence, I tell them it's the elected CFO of the state of Maryland.
Well, that's a good way to put it. And so, controller, it just sounds such a big word, but it has a lot to do.
Yeah.
And so I like the fact that you said that the controller has something to do with how the state spends its money. So the state received quite a bit of federal money. Our state, Maryland, had a surplus. I don't know about Illinois, Courtney, but Maryland had a surplus. What do you think about those plans that have been made so far for how that money is spent? When I look at one of our viewers' comments, who's looking for more support from government for some of our social services and our needs right here in Maryland.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. And the first thing I would say is that it's really difficult for the average person or almost anybody to find out how that money is being spent. There's no online dashboard showing us where it's going. When I, even as a legislator, email in and ask, I got sent a spreadsheet showing me, which is like, seriously, guys. I think that the very first issue is that we just need more transparency about where dollars are going and how we're spending money. And we've got the ARPA funding, right, the American Rescue Plan Act that Biden passed, but then they also passed a big infrastructure bill, right? And that infrastructure bill is going to mean so many capital dollars for Maryland, at more than we've gotten from the federal government really since like the New Deal. And so that's roads, it's broadband, it's updating water infrastructure, it's so much. And we transit, right? So we need schools, like we need to make sure, and one of the things I want to focus on is ensuring that there is transparency so that you can see where the money's going, right? We should have, I think our financial record should be an open book. So we could create openbookmaryland.gov where you can go in and, maybe there's a construction project down the street from you. You can see who's paying for it, if it's on time, on budget, who the contractors are, how much it costs, or if you want to track it the other way and look at, hey, where is this federal infrastructure dollars? Where are they actually going? Be able to look and sort of follow the money along, right, to see. So I'm very focused on government transparency. I think it builds confidence in government when people know what their government is doing. And it's just a way to make government work better, too. So I think first and foremost is we need to be more transparent about how many of those dollars are being spent.
So let me follow up to that. Can you talk a little bit about Maryland's track record and whether you are satisfied with this in terms of our minority participation with some of the state dollars?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And look, we are one of the first states in the country, if not the first state, to create an MBE, a Minority Business Enterprise Program. And yet over the years, it has really fallen behind some of our peer states, and there's no excuse for that. And I think there are a number of different problems. One is, it's hard to get certified. I've actually, as a lawyer, represented some small companies that qualified to help them get certified because it was a really unruly process and it just wasn't working out for them. So that's one issue. Two is then you get certified. Well, then what, right? There needs to be a way for you to get your foot in the door in the procurement process. So recently I was just outside of Cheverly, and I met this Black woman who owns her own architecture company. And she was talking about, she'd love to get involved in designing schools or bidding on contracts, but it's like a black box. It's so opaque. It's very hard to figure out how to get involved in state procurement, which I will say is bad for her, but also bad for us as taxpayers, because it means that there are fewer there are fewer requests to those proposals, or fewer proposals going out to RFPs, and so we aren't getting best value, right? Like, we don't want sole source contracts. We want there to be competition and to have lots of people. So that's two issues. And then third is that we're just granting all these waivers. So we're not making the agencies do the work of going out and building up and finding and working with minority-owned businesses, right? So if the Park Service says, "Oh, we just can't find a minority-owned or a Black-owned company to do the tree trimming that we need to do, can we just get a waiver? Like, we've looked, it doesn't exist." Well, of course it exists, and so then the Board of Public Works will grant a waiver. And at the end of the day, the Board of Public Works just needs to say, we're not doing that anymore. Like, you agencies have to go do the work to figure out, to create a culture where we're increasing equitable opportunities for MBEs. That's why we have the program. And that's how we'll get a better value for our dollars. And our dollars will go further as taxpayers, because we will be building up those businesses, and they'll be creating wealth for their families and their employees, right? So, we are not doing what we should be doing, not doing nearly as well as I think we could be doing. And I'm excited to bring a fresh perspective and voice, and, to not grant those waivers, because we've got to just say enough is enough.
Well, that's encouraging, because it's a long-standing problem. It's a long-standing problem. If you are just tuning in, this is the Chicken Box. We are pleased to have with us State Delegate for the State of Maryland, District 46, State Delegate Brooke Lierman, who is also a candidate for. She is the candidate, one of the candidates for Comptroller of the State of Maryland, and she's the candidate that the Afro has endorsed. And we thought it would be a good idea, Brooke, and we're glad you came today, so that our viewers can also hear about what a comptroller does and anything else that may be helpful to us as voters. It's the first day of early voting, and so I want to go back to voting. Megan left. We said she had to go for another appointment, but Megan wanted to ask about voting in general and voting rights for undocumented immigrants. And so if either you, Courtney, or you, Brooke, can jump in on the voting rights for undocumented immigrants. And I also want to talk a little bit about the Maryland law. Courtney, I don't know what happens in Illinois. Maybe you can help us. For those who are convicted felons, a lot of people think they can't vote because of certain things. Anybody want to take that about undocumented immigrants?
Sure. Do you want to start, or Courtney?
Oh, I do have an opinion on that. I think that undocumented sorry, I can't talk right now. Undocumented immigrants should have a right to vote. They are here in the country. They are a citizen just like everyone else, in my opinion. So I think that they should have those voting rights.
So it's interesting, obviously this is not allowed under in our Constitution, but I think, or federal law, but I think, it's been interesting to see local governments are starting to allow all adults to vote, regardless of citizenship status. And, I think to vote for mayor, for instance, or a local city council. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues. I think it's one of the things where it's one of the beautiful things about having lots of different governments is we can see how things work, and then decide whether it makes sense or not to expand those rights. I think, undocumented immigrants bring so much to our state, and many of them want to be documented, but it's very, very difficult. It's a difficult process. I'm really proud of the work that we have done to work with our undocumented immigrants in Maryland, whether that's we expanded their earned income tax credit so that regardless of citizenship, you would qualify if you've done work and you qualify for the EITC. I think we're one of only 3 states that do that. We've extended medical benefits for expecting moms to make sure that they can get the care that they need, which is really important for all of us writ large, right? It's for public health reasons to have babies being born healthily. So I do think it's really a really interesting idea and something that we need to have a discussion about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is an important idea. How about convicted? Well, we'll get to this question. Bonnie wants to know whether we still have a rainy day fund, and we can get back to the convicted felons and voting in a minute, and the gas tax. So, the gas is, I don't know, gas is ridiculous. I know it's worse. People say, well, you should go to California. It's worse. No, I'm right here in Maryland where it's bad. Is it bad where you are too, Courtney, in Illinois?
It's about $5.60 right now.
So
I was going to say the gas is a lot more expensive in Illinois than it is in Maryland. A lot more.
So the rainy day. The first question was, do we still have a rainy day fund?
Yep.
You can speak to that and how that's used and how, if you know how much it is, and then this gas tax piece. I know we had a little bit of a reprieve on the gas tax, but I think that is over now.
Yep. So we do have a rainy day fund. It's statutorily mandated. So we always have a rainy day fund. There's a certain amount that we have to set aside each year to make sure that we have it. It helps us keep our AAA bond rating, which is so essential to helping us borrow money at a cheaper rate. So we have a very healthy rainy day fund. We also have a pretty healthy surplus in the state of Maryland. So not all of our, we don't have all of our money being used right now. So we're doing, and we pass a balanced budget every year per the state constitution. So we are in a very fiscally sound situation right now in the state of Maryland.
So that's good. What about the gas tax?
Yeah, so what we did in the state General Assembly this year was we granted a short-term gas tax reprieve, a gas tax holiday. I think at that point it was unclear really how long inflation was going to continue. Remember at some points they were saying federal officials thought the inflation was transitory. We now know it's not transitory, right? It is here for some time, and the Fed is obviously working to bring it down, but it exists and it's real and it's really impacting people's bottom line, right? And really decreasing our purchasing power. And then there's the war, right? The Russian war in Ukraine. And in addition to what big oil and gas companies are claiming and keeping as profits. So this is not all just, companies being like, oh, let's give you more gas. We don't need to make money. I mean, a lot of this is up to these big multinational oil and gas companies, right? Using the situation to make more money. And at the end of the day, that affects everyday families, right? Who are trying to go on vacation this summer, perhaps. Maybe they haven't had a chance for the past couple of years because of the pandemic. Because of that, I do think it would make sense to extend the gas tax holiday for a limited amount of time. But when we do that, if we were to do that, we have to do it in a way that doesn't bankrupt our transportation trust fund and put us at a disadvantage moving forward for getting more federal dollars, right? So our transportation trust fund, that's where our gas tax dollars go to build up our transportation system, roads, bridges, transit, all goes to the transportation trust fund, which is a lockbox. It cannot be spent on anything else other than transportation, right? And all of the federal funding that's coming in, this infrastructure money, some of it's formula, so we just get it, but a lot of it's competitive. And in order for us to compete for those extra dollars, we have to have matching funds. And those matching funds come out of the Transportation Trust Fund. So if we drain our Transportation Trust Fund now, it means we're setting ourselves up for failure and to lose double or triple the money later on because of the infrastructure funding bill. So we have to do it in a way that is fiscally responsible and so that we're not shortchanging ourselves down the road. Is that fair? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Doesn't bring the gas prices down too much.
I mean, it's, although I will say I was listening to reports on the radio and it sounded like gas prices, the price of oil by the barrel have gone down in the past week or two. And so that should start translating soon to the gas stations. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't, and people are hurting, right? I mean, people, whether it's the price of gas or the price of orange juice or the price of milk, right? I mean, it's really challenging right now. And so that's why I do think, doing a reprieve and the gas tax makes sense. But when we do that, we have to use general fund dollars to backfill our transportation trust fund so that we're not shortchanging ourselves in the long run.
So thank you. So if you're just tuning in, this is a Chicken Box where you speak your truth. And we're so happy, Courtney and I are happy to have with us today Delegate Brooke Lierman, who is a candidate for Comptroller of the State of Maryland, also an attorney by profession, and has just loads of information. I want to talk a little bit about voting in Maryland. Today is the first day of early voting. And I don't think early voting is in every state. Courtney, do you have early voting in Illinois as well?
Yes.
You all have early voting. Some states, they're very limited in what people can do in terms of early voting or write-in votes or even day of votes, but Maryland is not one of those. And so Delegate Lierman, can you tell us a little bit about early voting and about, talk to us about people who, they've just not registered. Today is early voting. The regular primary is not for until July 19th.
Yeah.
They meant to register. Now they think they can't vote, or they are a felon. They think so. Can you help us? Who can vote? If I didn't register, can I still vote?
Right. So we do have same day voter registration. So you can register on the day of the election to vote. So fear not. If you meant to register and you didn't, and you really want to vote, I hope you will. You can register on the day of election. We have same day voter registration. In Maryland, we've tried to make it as easy as possible to vote. We basically have three ways, right? We have mail-in ballots. So you can go online, elections.maryland.gov, request a mail-in ballot, mailed to your house. You mail it at any post office box, or you can take it to a drop box location. They're all over the state. That's one way, mail-in ballots. The second way is early vote. We have 8 days total, so Thursday to Thursday. So including both Thursdays, it's 8 days. So starting today through next Thursday, you can vote from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at a number of places all over the state. And you can vote anywhere in your county, right? So if you, Dr. Draper, we're in Baltimore. If you live in Cherry Hill, but you work in Northeast Baltimore, maybe it's easier for you to vote near where you work on your lunch break, right? And so you can. During early voting, you can go vote there as long as it's in the same jurisdiction.
You can vote any place during early voting, right?
During early vote. Yep.
Same day registration. You go to any polling place, same day registration, and you can register there and vote at the same time?
Yep. And then there's election day, July 19th. And that is when there's your normal, you can go vote at your normal precinct location, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we have expanded voter access and voting access in Maryland. There are so many ways to vote, mail in early, day of on election day. And because, we want people to be able to have the ability to get out and make their voice heard. That's how democracy works. So you can just, see there, you can go to elections.maryland.gov and get more information.
Well, suppose I requested a mail-in ballot, but now I don't want to do mail-in. I want to go to early vote. Can I do that?
So you need to bring your mail-in ballot with you because this is how we prevent voter fraud, right? If you request your mail-in ballot and you fill it out and mail it in, and then you go vote, right? We've got to make sure you can only do it once. So if you requested your mail-in ballot, but now you've changed your mind and you want to go vote, you have to bring your mail-in ballot with you. And you're either going to have to surrender that ballot, or you will have to, or you can just fill that ballot out when you're there too and turn it in there. But you can't vote twice. And so we have systems. They might also ask you to fill out a provisional ballot to make sure that will be counted if your mail-in ballot is not counted, right? And not mailed in. Yep.
Got it. And on election day, you have to go where you are supposed to vote. And can you talk a little bit about the fact that some polling places have changed and how
Yes.
people. Yeah.
Yep. So every year, basically every election cycle, there's, things might change a little bit, right? Just because maybe a building's under construction or, it's being used for something else. And so it can't be a polling place anymore. And that's why it's important to go to elections.maryland.gov. Remember, too, that we just did redistricting. So some people are going to be voting for different members of Congress and different state senators and state delegates. Now, I'm running statewide, right? I'm running for state comptroller, so redistricting didn't affect my race. But for instance, I've had John Sarbanes as my congressman for a number of years, and now I will be voting for Kweisi Mfume because of congressional redistricting. So some of the people you see on your ballot might change if you're in one of those areas.
Right. And then some of those districts were split. So you were used to voting for 3 delegates. You're only going to vote for 2, or you're only going to vote for 1 because your district was split. So all of those things to take into account when you go to vote. The important thing is to go to vote, is to vote. And so we know our turnout is not what it needs to be. Courtney, do you have a question for Delegate Lierman? We're almost at the end where we're going to just jump on the box with our final thoughts, but do you have anything that's just burning on your heart you want to ask?
Yes, this one is important to me. So I know that people primarily focus on the presidential elections. Can you explain the importance of voting in the state and local elections as well?
Sure. Look, I think states are the most important. I mean, local and state elections affect our everyday lives so much, whether it's, the roads you drive on or the transit you take or the water that you drink, right? That our Maryland Department of the Environment is supposed to be keeping safe. Or, you're starting a small business and you have to go through your state government and your local government, whether it's you had a doctor's appointment. Well, your nurses and your doctors are registered, and approved through the Maryland Board of Nursing, right? I mean, it's all state government, and your schools, right? They're funded by the state, whether it's University of Maryland or Morgan or your public schools like K-12, right? I mean, all our community colleges. State government is so important. And I know that it's not in the headlines all the time, but it really makes a huge difference in people's lives. And you have the ability, because fewer people vote in state and local elections, it means your vote matters more, right? It carries more weight. And so it's really important to be able to show up. If you can, educate yourself about the people who are running, talk to some of your friends, to other people you respect, and then learn who your delegates and state senators are, who your comptroller is. I'm hoping to be your next comptroller, and email us, reach out, and if people don't get back to you, maybe they shouldn't represent you, right? I'm very responsive as a delegate. I try to always, I show up when people want me there or need me. I am present and proactive around my district. That's how I'll be as a comptroller. It's how you learn. It's how you do better for people. It's how you make government work better for people. But I really think, look, states are the bulwark, right? They are the ones where we can do police accountability reform, right? They are the places where we can, impact the environment. They're the places here where we're going to protect a woman's right to choose. It's all going to be at the state level now. So it's really essential to get involved in state and local government. Yep.
Absolutely. And so we had a viewer, a LinkedIn viewer, who's asking, what documents do you need to be able to register to vote? Saying, what do you have to show? Is it just proof of residency?
That's a great question. So to register to vote, let's see, what do you need? You go online, elections.maryland.gov, to register. There's an online voter registration system.
But if you're let's say you're walking into a polling place today, early voting.
You're walking in.
Proof of residency, I think.
Yeah, you need proof of residency. So bring your up-to-date MVA issued license or ID card, or a paycheck bank statement with a photo ID. If your bank statement, if you've moved and you haven't had it updated, something that shows where you need to prove who you are and where you live, right? So you can go. You basically just have to prove where you live. You can bring your MVA issued license, an ID card, or change of address card, or a paycheck, a bank statement, a utility bill, or some government document that has your name and your new address on it.
Okay. Now I'm not real clear on this, so I'm gonna jump into this water, but I believe that even people who are homeless have a way to vote as well.
Yes, they can. They can vote as well. So, and they they can bring documents to show where they're staying, or they can bring something that shows they're a Maryland resident as well. So yes, if you're homeless, you can also vote.
Okay, so if you're homeless, if you are a felon that's served your time,
You can vote.
You can vote. And so often people think they can't vote or that their vote does not matter. I'm on the Boxx a little bit. I'm gonna get on the Boxx a lot in a moment. And so, Delegate Lierman, before we do our final closing remarks on the Boxx, and you'll have like 60 seconds or a little bit more to just be on the Boxx. Courtney, you're gonna get on the Boxx in a moment. Let me say that this week's Afro, we still do a print edition. We do a lot of
I love
things.
it. Yep.
We still do a print edition, and the headline says "Voters Matter." Voters matter, and so this is our Voters Matter edition. Early voting, July 7th to the 14th, and then we have our Afro ballot, and at the top of the ballot, we have those that we are endorsing for Congress, for governor, for attorney general, for controller, and for some of the General Assembly seats. And so next week, Wes Moore, who is a gubernatorial candidate for Maryland and who has been endorsed by the Afro, will be our guest next week on the Chicken Box. So be sure to tune in to hear from Wes Moore. We were privileged today to have Delegate Brooke Lierman, who we have endorsed at the Afro for the statewide office of comptroller. And go to afro.com to read why we think Brooke Lierman is the best candidate for comptroller for Maryland, why we think that Wes Moore is the best candidate for governor, why we think Anthony Brown is the best candidate for states for state's attorney. For attorney general, as well as our other endorsements. I'm not going to give them all to you. You got to go to afro.com. Speaking of afro.com, that's where you go to sign up for our gala. We hope that you, our viewers, will join us August the 13th. You can find information about our gala. We want to give a shout out right now to our sponsors, AARP and Johns Hopkins and Tedco and the Murphy Law Firm, with others on the way. Tommy Davidson is our host, as well as our entertainment. So you all are laughing already. So Tommy Davidson from In Living Color is going to actually do a comedy routine and host the entire night. And then
cool.
Because it's a celebration of 130 years, we will be dancing to the music of Kid Capri on that night. So it's Saturday, August the 13th. Go to afro.com. Come on and join us. 130 years is a long time. And so we are looking to just celebrate. We want to thank our loyal readers and supporters at that gala. We just thank you for your support. Without our readers and our supporters, we would not be here. So thank you. So I feel like I've been on the Boxx, but I'm gonna step back. The topic today is Black people versus voting, and so we're gonna get on the Boxx now. We're gonna get on the Boxx, and so Courtney, I'm gonna start with you. Just get on the Boxx and say whatever's on your mind, and then Delegate Lierman, we're gonna go to you and feel free. You're on the Boxx. All right, Courtney, you're on the Boxx.
Thank you again, Delegate Lierman, for coming on the Chicken Box today. You had some great, insightful information, and I think it's so important for people to go out and vote for the state and local government. Don't just focus on the presidential elections. Your votes matter, so make sure that you go out and vote. And don't forget about the gala. Don't forget to get your tickets. And I'm so excited to see everyone.
All right. So Courtney is yielding some of her time.
Yes, look at that.
So feel free to use it. Go ahead.
Well, I will be, yes, very quickly. Thank you, Dr. Draper. Thank you, Courtney. Great to see Megan when she was here. Congratulations, 130 years, oldest Black-owned business in the state of Maryland, something to be incredibly proud of. For me, being endorsed by the Afro is incredibly humbling, to be honest. And, I'm really proud of it, and just thrilled because I've loved being a delegate for Baltimore. I love representing part of Baltimore City and working with you, Dr. Draper, and so many of the great leaders in our city and our state. I know that we can do better, right? This is our moment in Maryland to be bold and to do better for people, right? That means making sure we elect people, leaders who understand that we all do better when we all do better. Right? We've got to leave no one behind and keep working and moving forward together. And that's why I'm running. I mean, I've loved leading a life of service. I've loved working as a civil rights and disability rights attorney. I'm a public school mom in Baltimore City and excited to bring that work ethic to the comptroller's office to work with people, to make sure that our state government is working better for people, to make sure we're using the power of the purse in Maryland to really build generational wealth, to close the racial wealth divide that exists in the state of Maryland, and to prepare our state for challenges, public school funding, climate change, and more, ensuring we're protecting a woman's right to choose. I'm excited to be running. I'm excited to have your endorsement. There's so much that we can do together to really think big about how the comptroller's office can be a place where we're building wealth, creating opportunity, tackling barriers, but also where we just help people pay their taxes more easily and access state programs and benefits, right? It's about having a big vision, but also sweating the small stuff because details matter. So I'm excited to be here, thrilled to have your endorsement. I hope everybody watching will make sure that you get out and vote. Today's the first day of early voting. It lasts for a week. And then, of course, Election Day is July 19th. I hope I can earn your vote and your support. And I look forward to working with all of you to build a better Baltimore and to build a better Maryland. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you, Delegate Lierman. We are thrilled that you were able to join us today for the chicken box. You gave us so much information, and thank you for encouraging everyone. Walk right. There are many places you can just walk into today, including some public libraries.
Yeah.
If you're in Northeast Baltimore, like I am, Morgan State University, Tyler Hall is an early voting place, but they're all over the place, and so you can just do that. Thank you, Courtney Alexander, my Gen Z co-host. Thank you so much. And we thank Megan, and we're looking forward to Kevin coming on back next week as we talk to Wes Moore. I want to close on the box by quoting just the first couple of paragraphs from a front page story that the Afro is running, written by Stacey Brown, the National Newspaper Publishers Association correspondent, senior national correspondent. And he says this, ahead of the all-important 2022 midterm elections. He's talking federal, but this applies to us as well. He says reports show that more than 55 million Americans remain unregistered to vote. I don't even know how many zeros that is, 55 million. And about 10 million of those 55 million are African Americans. That is way above the percentage of our representation overall. And so he talks about the fact, the same thing we're talking about. Listen, if you're not registered to vote, I say, and I'm on the box, don't complain. You get what you get. And you think your one vote doesn't count, don't complain, because if your one vote is with my one vote is with somebody else's one vote, and we get enough of these one votes, that's how we change government. And so as long as we allow people who don't have our best interests at heart to sit in those powerful seats and to make decisions for our lives and do not exercise our legal right to vote, then I say we don't have the right to complain. Now, your candidate may not, my candidate may not always win, but if they didn't win this time, then I want you to join me, if we are of like mind, that we can make sure the person we want to win wins next time. And so I hear people talking about what government is not doing, what government ought to do, how the money should be spent. And then you ask, well, who did you vote for last election? Oh, I didn't bother to register to vote. They're going to just put those same people back in anyway. I say that if that's your attitude, you respectfully, you can hold on to it, but it's not going to move the needle. The only way we're going to change is if we come together and form the kinds of coalitions that make our voices heard. It is no mistake, it is not by accident that African American women are the strongest voting bloc in the country. Why? Because we organized and we are ready to vote and band together for those things that we find of common interest. So I just want to encourage somebody today. Hope you'll stop watching. When you stop watching the Chicken Box, you'll find yourself an early voting place if you're in Maryland. I know Chicago, Illinois has already had their primary, but the numbers are awful. They are horrifying across the country. And so do not complain if you're a Democrat. And don't complain about the Trump Republicans. You get what you get when you don't vote. So I'm going to get off the box. Thank you. It's 1:00. Thank you, Delegate Lierman, again. We are pulling for you. We've endorsed you.
Thank you.
We wish you well, and it won't be as long as it has been.
Yeah. Here we go. Here we go. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, everybody who tuned in today. Take care. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.